Welcome to Groove Portia, the podcast that uncovers the hidden treasures within grief. I'm your host, Portia the producer, and I'm inviting you to join me on a transformative journey where we will exchange laughter, of course the best medicine of them all, reflect on cherished memories. Remember that time that the little boy grabbed my hand instead of his mother's at the amusement park? Yikes. And of course discover gratitude while navigating one of life's hardest challenges, loss. So get ready to groove with me, Portia the producer. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Groove with Portia. I am your host, Portia Booker, and I apologize in advance. I'm coming under the weather with something, but I'm not going to cancel on you guys because I've got some amazing people with me today. Those of you who know, I have been doing Groove with Portia since 2019, and my show holds a special place in my heart because it received its name from my mother. And as those of you know my grief story of losing both my parents 9 months apart, one of the things that I noticed is that people tended to want to coddle me with regurgitated platitudes. And sometimes, let's be realistic, there are no words to say when you lose your person. So today, everybody, I have a special treat for all of you. I am joined by three amazing women who came together through the loss of their sons, and they want to share their story and also inspire others to not have to hold their grief inside. So I'm joined today by Miss Anastasia Brown, Miss Dawn Huie, and also Miss Valarie Allyn, who are the host of There Are No Words, but We Have a Few podcasts. So welcome, ladies, to Groove with Portia. How are you today?
We're good.
So good.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to do this.
Look,
Yes.
I am honored because when I saw the platform that you've created, because there's so many people out there that have lost children and they're stuck in their grief 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, and they don't know where to begin. They don't even know how to even talk about it without breaking down, and they feel isolated from their families. So for starters, I'm doing this a little different than I normally do. So Dawn, Anastasia, and Valarie, would the three of you please introduce my audience to your sons who have made their physical transition from this earth? Tell us a little bit about them and what memory of theirs still continues to brighten your day.
Oh, that's a great question. Val or Don, do you want to start?
Why don't we let Dawn go first?
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm Dawn Huie, and my son Ryan Huie died by suicide. It's still hard to say the words. It just doesn't sound right. 11 years ago, after a sudden mental illness that we are uncertain how or what it was. We won't know the full answer until we see him again, which I truly believe we will. It was a quick descent. From Wednesday, he started acting different, to Saturday when he took his own life. So it literally was a matter of days, which is such a unique story. And I will say one thing, that my memory of him is just his laugh and his smile and his kindness. And everybody says that about their child who is no longer here and can't irritate them anymore. But he really lit up a room. He was trying to do stand-up. He had a great sense of humor. And I'm not sure how the darkness took over so quickly. Again, I've never heard that story before. The last time we saw him, he was trying to explain to us the idea of a reverse peacock, which, because he was dressed almost borderline like a homeless person, and he was explaining that he wanted people to love him for who he was on the inside. He didn't want to have surface intangibles make people like him better or worse. And it's such a pie in the sky idea that like a young child would have, and here he was 27. But that was how his heart was on that morning when he took his life. So again, that's what points us to kind of a manic euphoria that we saw that then turned into a manic depression, because it was just a matter of hours later that he took his own life. Oh, I wasn't prepared for this question. So I'm going to pass it to the next mom and hear another story. Thanks, Portia.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. I know, but I want this platform to always be a space where people are remembered. I talk about my mom all the time. So I know it's hard because sometimes I still break down talking about my mom. So I appreciate you sharing that and being so vulnerable, Dawn. Thank you.
Go ahead, Val.
Okay, so okay, so my son's name is Rosino and nickname Z. Z, I want to say is. I'd like to say is because I believe he's with me every minute of every day. So he is an incredible artist, thinker, philosopher, musician, Pisces. He was a Pisces, super huge heart, taught me about jazz. And he was one of my greatest teachers, actually, because he was such an old soul. He kind of, his energy, he struggled with acclimating to being a human on planet Earth. He found humanity to be cruel at times, and he had a difficult time fitting into kind of society in general. So as an artist, he started to isolate and then eventually discovered drugs and addiction, and then eventually addiction. A 7-year battle with a heroin addiction took his life. But God, it's crazy to think about him, because I was not prepared for this question, but he passed in New Orleans in this on this incredible courtyard with these gigantic oak trees in the quarter, and he left as he came in a very poetic sense. And recently, you guys, I've had a breakthrough about memories. So I have been, for the last few weeks, taking his memories and turning them into light and warmth and love versus something that derails me and takes me down. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's funny because in my grief, and in hanging out with Z from the other side, it's the bigger challenge is how do I touch the universe every day to grab onto him in the now? So I've been really kind of focused on being with him in the now, creating new memories. And actually, even the last couple of weeks, I've been able to laugh with him because he through meditation comes through to me. But that said, I'm really focused on creating new memories, if you will, and turning the experiences that I've had into positive light experiences for myself versus the negative, because ultimately I've concluded that I have no control, and we all cross over at some point on planet Earth. So I'm trying to celebrate the idea of that, because I too, like Dawn, you mentioned, at some point I will be on the other side with him and I'll get to hang out with him again in a different kind of way. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Z. Yeah,
Yeah.
Z.
Thank you for sharing Z with us. What I
Yeah.
love too, Valarie, is that you're keeping his memory alive by saying is. I don't agree when people tell me, oh, well, it's in the past. I said no, because I still believe that I carry both Shay and Charles, my parents, with me everywhere that I go. So
goosebumps, totally. Absolutely.
So thank you. Thank you so much, Valarie.
Thank you.
Anastasia, you're in the hot seat, my friend.
My son, Wilson, he was definitely my person. He struggled with mental health. My Scottish side of the family, half of them killed themselves. And he sadly got the bullet, and he self-medicated. And then he got healthy for 8 years and established 3 detox centers in Tennessee, and loved to scholarship people when they couldn't afford detox. He loved to give. He saved hundreds of lives while he was healthy. And then he didn't tell me or anyone that he stopped taking his bipolar medicine. He just refused to talk about his mental health. And I was just getting over the loss of my sister, my only sibling. And when he died, and it was just so, my ears really could not hear those words. And then my father died 1 week after we buried my son. So I was a mess. I was just very alone. My mom's still alive, thank God. And he was the first person I wanted to talk to every morning of every day. I miss his laugh. He had the best laugh. And he had a really unusual gait. He took up a lot of real estate when he walked. He was a real big, burly, handsome, very handsome man. He wanted 5 children. And so I talked to him through an angel reader. We all have the same one. And I said, I just missed your laugh. And he said, Mom, had I known you liked my laugh so much, I would have done it more. And he was just, he loved my parents. He was the best grandson and a great brother. He had a huge heart. When he was healthy, he was just the most wonderful human being. And but he did not want his mental illness. I don't think he even wanted a diagnosis, because he did not want to be like my sister, who was also bipolar. And he struggled. Like, the point of this podcast that we've been creating is he struggled alone. He didn't tell anyone about his mental illness. He didn't tell anyone about how he was self-medicating. He was in Mexico. I didn't know where he was. And when I got the call, and it was from this number in Mexico, and there was 4 prescription bottles from Mexican pharmacies. And the autopsy it was in Spanish. I'm wondering if there was fentanyl in one of those bottles, and he just never woke up. So yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. It's still fresh, like
Yeah.
it happened yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing Wilson with us, his laugh. I'm sure that will keep you going, especially on the tough days. So
Yeah.
I thank each of you for sharing Ryan, Z, and also Wilson with our audience, because people need to know who they are. They live through you. So let's talk about your podcast. There are no words, but we have a few. And I've heard this a lot in my grief groups that I run. I run the parent loss group and the suicide loss group, that there tends to be no words, right? When you lose a child, when you lose anybody. And I'm curious, for the 3 of you, what were some words and actions that gave you a sense of comfort from people around you?
I love it when people ask to see a picture of my son. I love showing pictures of my son.
Show one.
Okay. Go ahead, Don. You were about to say something as I look for Wilson.
Yeah, what was so helpful to me, and again, the impetus for us really expending the energy to do this podcast and build out the website, is people who were further down the road than I was, and seeing that they could do it, through the struggles, and seeing that they still were able to maintain a sense of humor, even if it's dark humor, and just that introduction. One of my good friends had lost a child about 10 years before I lost Ryan, and she introduced me to the idea of looking for signs. And I think for me, that has been hugely helpful. Is the wrong I have no words. It's just edifying, and it's uplifting, to as Val touched on before, is that idea that he's nearby, and that cardinal tapping at the window, or my wind chimes singing this beautiful song with no breeze. I can hold my heart and go, oh, he's here. So I think for me, that's a big one.
Yeah. For me, initially, when Z crossed over, I jumped just my spiritual work. I went straight into I wanted to find him. I wanted to talk to him. And I was like, okay, Valarie, there's only one way to accomplish this is I made my world very quiet. So initially I kept a lot of people out of my space so that I can meditate and talk to him and find him, be in nature, hike. And I started to hear him come through within the first 7 days of him crossing over. In fact, when he did cross over, I woke to a vision. The most comforting thing I have yet to experience in my process and my journey and walk with grief is the gift that I received when he crossed over in the form of a vision. And it was so majestic and it was so peaceful and it was so beautiful. And I realized that he is at ease in his addiction. He left the anxiety and the struggle of the human experience, and I got to feel the ease in which he transitioned. And I went, oh my God, that's the feeling. And it's almost impossible to explain the feeling of this gift. But the faith that I have in the other side and in my connection to the other side is the first thing that got me through when he crossed over, and then eventually making space for other humans to come in. And that's when Dawn came into my life. Dawn is one of the first people I brought into my life as a result, because I knew we had this one crazy trauma like in common, and I felt safe in that. So it was making space, really less words and more making space and connecting to the right energy that helped me and served me really well and still does.
Yeah. Here's my son.
Oh, look at him. Oh,
I do. I love talking about him. And yeah, I think it's helpful. I think people don't know what to say, so they don't say anything, and that almost kind of minimizes his role in the world. You know, he was my entire world.
yeah. And you're right. That's why I wanted you to show a picture of him to everybody, because people want to see, right? People want to see that he existed. He still is through you, right? And I'm glad, Dawn, that you brought up the signs. This
Yeah.
morning, before we jumped on here today, there was two cardinals in my front yard playing, two boy cardinals. And I have a little dog. His name is Mr. Fletcher. He's spoiled. He loved my mom to pieces. Well, the two cardinals, we just sat there and watched them fly in the tree, fly around us. And he just sat there, both of us. And I said, hi, mommy. Hi, daddy. I just knew though, right? Just you grow accustomed at some point to these signs, right? Whether it's the cardinals, the hawks, the numbers,
You're right.
right? Right. Even when you're out sometimes, like I had a woman one time at a wedding, not too long after my mom made her transition. Lady had the same name as my mom, and she also had the same grip as my mom, because she grabbed my hands because I was telling her about my mom and all the things. And she's like, Portia, you stay strong, you keep going. And I literally almost start crying because I'm like, how is this possible?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, within the first month I got home, I was kayaking, and Wilson comes to me in dragonflies, and I was kayaking, and both of my arms were covered in dragonflies. No one else. I was kayaking with 10 people, and they were all on me.
Dragonfly. Oh, I can go on a whole tangent about dragonflies, just the different colors that I've seen around without water, mind you, and also blue herons. I've been seeing, I had a near-death experience over the summer, and a blue heron was flying over me with, mind you, no water nearby. So, but that's a whole nother story and a half. One of the things that I noticed about the loss of each of your sons is that there's a stigma attached with overdose and suicide. And I'm curious for the three of you, how do you navigate that on a daily basis? And how can you encourage others to not still be in that grief pit of shame around how their sons or their children have made their transition? You guys call it crossover. I call it transition, but same thing.
Yeah.
It's not talking about it. People, I mean, that's why we're doing this podcast, is we want to change the stigma around mental health and addiction. It's something that if you don't talk about it, how can you change the stigma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with boys. You know, it's a very rare boy who's got a large group of friends where they share their struggles that they're going through. That idea that suicide comes in a really dark place, and so many people, you know, have battles with depression, anxiety, and to help them understand that it's a reaction to that when you don't feel there are other choices. It's not a weakness. It's just I need to stop the pain, which is behind a lot of addiction. You know, I just have to stop the pain. I don't know how else. I can't go on in this pain. Yeah, that doesn't really answer how to stop the stigma, but just I think for me, it's to openly talk about my dark places that I've gone to and how I have made bad choices in avoiding pain and how that does not work well for me.
And it's
But
also, Dawn, like, I also feel like it's not like a failure. You know, like addiction is not, you know, what I learned through Rosino so deeply is, and because he was so brilliant, I mean, such a talented human, I do now know the type of pain he was in because of the pain I feel now in loss. Do you know what I'm saying?
yes,
And
yeah.
I realize the stigma of mental health, the stigma of addiction is that there's something derogatory about it, or there's a failure that exists in that. And it's just not true. It's not true. It's navigating the human experience is so deep and so complicated, and it's a learning process every step of the way. And I shook through the stigma of heroin so early on because I live in an artist community with a lot of layers of the human experience going on and being expressed through art, music, etc. And so it's more accepted in the art communities than it is in the general population in the sense of addiction. And early on, I realized, like, you know, I had no control over the situation as a parent. What I could do is, you know, fight the fight in the way that I could offer it to him to help him find a better way of being, or to find some kind of relief in his addiction or in what he was internally struggling with. But we all come in unique souls and with unique issues, fully loaded. And I learned that all I could do was just love him and not judge him. And I feel like, I think that we attach judgment and failure to the idea of suicide or addiction. And it's not, it's part of our human experience, just like anything else is. So I look at Rosino like it was part of his life experience. And I don't have regrets for him or myself, or I don't carry that weight about it. You know, like, it is part of it, and it was his choice. And I don't know if that speaks to the stigma of it, but it's just the more loving and lack of judgment. We should leave judgment behind and kind of help and love and understand and hear and listen, all those things.
And Valarie, I'm glad you brought up the love piece, right? Because we all have love that has had to pivot now,
Yeah.
right? The way that we still love, you love Rosino, Dawn loves Ryan, and Anastasia loves Wilson. That love energy is still here.
100%.
We've had to pivot it to a different form and be open to how our love is received. And to your point about addiction and the stigma around mental health, I think more people need to realize that people are doing the best that they can and to love them where they are.
Yes. Yes. And there's nothing wrong with where someone's at. That's just judgy. You have to like go, okay, I'm going to meet you where you're at. At least I'm going to do the very best that I can to meet you where you're at and figure out how I can add to the experience, or, you know, what my gift might be to offer, or just make space, create space for another. Like I learned Rosino gifted me all of those things. He gifted me that. For sure.
Excellent. Excellent. You know, we're going to be wrapping up here soon, Dawn, Anastasia, and Valarie. And let me just say, it has been an honor to have the three of you here to share your story about your children and also the mission that you're doing out into the world to encourage more parents to open up, to let them know that their grief doesn't have to be the nail in their own cross for the rest of their life. You know, I'm curious for our audience. One of the things that you guys talked about in the podcast was acclimating. And let's be realistic, acclimating to the loss of your person and also acclimating to how your family is grieving or not grieving the current loss that's in front of you, even though you all have that connection through this person. Have each of you learned to acclimate watching your family grieve and also being able to hold space for them and yourselves?
One of the first things, if I may, one of the first things Rosino channeled to me within the first 7 days of him crossing over was, Mama, be selfless with your grief. And I was like, okay. It took me a minute to figure it out because I was like so overwhelmed that I wasn't considering anyone else's experience with the loss they were having of him, right? And so I was told from the other side to be selfless with my grief. So I wrestled with that and made space, you know, for my friends to like fall to their knees in front of his altar and let them have that space. And it didn't have to always be about my pain. So, you know, and I learned that through loving my friends and loving my family, to let them hurt too, you know. It's a journey though. It's a process. It takes a minute. It takes a minute.
Literally, I'm still acclimating. I mean, I didn't even think about, like, I'm now just hearing where people were when they heard about Wilson's passing. Like one friend of mine was at a middle of a wedding, and she screamed when she heard. And so yeah, I'm just now starting to think about the pain that my mother went through, the pain that Wilson's friends went through, and Wilson was friends with all of my friends, and so they lost him too. And so it'll be a lifelong journey to acclimate.
I had somebody gifted me a reading yesterday that had some wonderful words, and one of my favorite words is alchemy. So it's an alchemy of like an oyster that gets irritated with a piece of sand, and over the years it builds and builds, and the the oyster learns to live with this piece of sand and actually makes it soft and beautiful on the inside. And it takes years. It doesn't happen fast. It's a piece of sand for a really long time where it's irritating, and then time takes time, which sounds dorky, but it's true that it's not the first thing I think of in the morning. So it's alchemized to not be as sharp, to not draw blood every time. And I love what Val said about changing the memories into light. And that's kind of like making it into a pearl. These are the gifts, I don't know. I went off, but
no. That was well said. That was well said. Thank you.
No, and you're right, Dawn. I mean, I think a lot of times when we're in the thick of the loss, of the grief, we can't see the hidden gifts that arise from the loss, from the transition.
Yeah.
Right? Because my audiobook is called Finding Grace Within Grief, Her Transition, My Transformation, because that was essentially the epiphany I had when I picked up my mom's ashes from the funeral home. Literally, this little thing came in the window like, Portia, what if your mom's transition is for your transformation? And I didn't understand it at the time.
No.
But now I understand. Now I get it, because grief is the birthplace of transformation if you're open to experiencing it.
Yes, it deeply is. The expansion in it and what you discover about yourself and the universe in grief is one of the greatest empowerments I have ever experienced. And it's also, like anything, the pendulum goes both ways. With great loss can come great learning and expansion and transformation. You do have to allow it though, Portia, you're right.
Yeah. And I'll just one quick thing. A saying I've fallen in love with is, all my good friends have limps, meaning they've all had something that's kind of changed their gait a little, but they're still up, and they've gone through that post-traumatic growth, if you will, that new term. And it is 100. I'm a nicer person. I'm more compassionate. I'm more empathetic now.
Yeah, I'm definitely a better daughter and a better friend for sure because of it.
Well, everybody, that was Miss Anastasia Brown, Miss Dawn Huie, and also Miss Valarie Allyn that you heard from on Grew with Portia today. And that concludes another episode. And until next time, everybody, peace and hair grease, everyone.